I'd like to thank Professor Kirk for a very inspiring paper. We have 20 minutes, we will have 20 minutes for questions, but before, and there's a microphone for those who would like to ask questions. But for the first, before we get to that, I would just say that despite however rich this program has been, this is the one session that has been focusing on Gülen schools around the world. And given the fact that there's over, Gülen schools in over 100 countries, as far in my understanding, that even if we had another 97 papers like this, it still would not do justice to the richness and the geographical distribution of these schools. And I could say what I've seen in Turkmenistan or Tatarstan or Turkey, and I'm sure all of you would have similar stories like that. So are there questions for the panelists? If you have a question for the panelists, and again, I would like to thank all of them.
Good.
Please come up.
As they are walking up, can I say that Gülen-Inspired me to have my students doing online dialogue with Muslim students, and I'm trying to get schools in other countries that people would be willing to do online dialogue with my students. So I'm going to have these passed around. If you know any teachers in other countries that would do online dialogue, please tell them to contact me.
Okay, could you please introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Meltem Nazkaşı. I'm a Turkish international student studying at the University of Chicago. I would like to ask this question to all of you, not to criticize or to challenge, but to understand better some particular things that have to do with Gülen movement. Well, I've studied at the United World College of the Adriatic, and this is another movement which I think is so much related to the Gülen movement, even if the names of the movements are different, because my school, that is called United World College, is also another movement that uses education as a force to unite people, nations, societies, races. And so I have a lot in common in my background that has to do with the movement. And my question is, because when we talk about our ideals and goals, we were sometimes criticized as being too idealistic. And I see that Gülen movement has its own advantages because it seems to be the case that it works, and it works all around, and has some empirical changes around the world. But I was just wondering, because we have this wonderful presentation given by all of you, and it always emphasizes all the strengths. And I was wondering, because you have all this information,
whether... Okay. What's the question?
The question is, it all sounds great, but are there any challenges? Are there things that are not working, or not working as well as Gülen movement advocates would want it? I'm just trying to be more realistic and to understand the movement holistically. Thank you.
I'm not expert about Gülen movement, but according to our interviews, our observation to Gülen-inspired schools in the case of Nigeria, so the school is all running by the secular education, not holistically, not like any kind of the religion, the basics. So as a multicultural person, my view, if any kind of schools inspired by any scholars, any kind of persons, if they are receiving a good education, if they are educating by themselves as a future leaders, so for me that I do not care any kind of the movement of if they have any kind of agenda, but the school we interviewed, we observed that a lot of the students from different diversity, different ethnic backgrounds, they're receiving a wonderful education. They the importance of Gülen-inspired schools, they teach and how to be a good human being and teaching moral values, and also the students are not only being successful in their subjects by science education, mathematics education, they're also teaching how to be a good person in their life. So for your question, there might be differences between different movements, different organizations, but for Gülen movement, the Gülen the associates that open the school all over the world. So we see all of the same conclusion, the same factors. The school are successful, the students are happy, the parents are happy, the students they change their behaviors, and then they are more comfortable. They are more openings to learning how to peace with accepting other as a human beings.
I'm trying to think that through, and I'm really not thinking of what I see as weaknesses in the schools. And I guess maybe that's because the schools have a lot of values that I highly value, and I think they're doing a good job sharing them.
Hi, Cecilia Mowat with Strategies Insight here in Chicago. I've worked in the past with charter school clients, and I'm curious because you mentioned that you have only 28% of the students in the Nigeria schools receiving scholarship, and I'm curious on the benefit side, where we're trying to be socially beneficial. I understand educating students, any student, is socially beneficial. To what degree throughout all of the Gülen school movement are we doing accessibility and affordability and trying to reach the poorest of the poor? That may be one of the challenges that the young lady might be referring to. If you could talk to that. And also if you could speak to, I think you may have spoken to the issue of morality being taught and not religion being taught. Is there anywhere in the Gülen movement where they do a survey of religion courses? I mean, I know that the Lasallian groups I worked with were in Turkey, and they didn't teach religion. They didn't teach the Catholic religion there, but I'm just curious, do we have any survey of religion so we can have knowledge and understanding?
I think it's a great question. Thank you. For being a scholarship, so this is the data I collected from the students and the school administrators. 28% the students, they do not pay nothing, like paying nothing. Well, the school, fee-based, they pay tuition for every year. So the students from there are 36 states, they have an entrance exam for in 36 states. So the 28% of the students who cannot pay anything, they are a very poor family. But there are also some portions, they have scholarships, they pay by school administrators and state governors. So these are kind of scholarships that bring all students, like a Nigerian present kids in the school, and the kids from very poor family, they in the same umbrella and living below one, equality. They learn how to equality, which is the Nigerian most corrupted country in African. So they learn how to, sharing, all values each other. So it's a kind of, I think, the big, the advantages for Nigerian poor students. They're having advantages to being, study in the best colleges in Nigeria. For your second question, to teaching religion, moral values doesn't mean to teaching religions. Yes, they teach religion in schools, but the school being a multi-religion, the population, they have a sermons Friday for the Muslim kids, and they have a sermons for Sunday for the Christian kids. Even one of the Muslim teachers, parents reported that I'm a Christian, and the teacher called me, we have a Sunday, the servant, but your kid did not attend. Where is it? So it's a kind of learning, religions. It's not in classrooms, but they have other seminars like outside, like a extracurricular. So they teaching the Christian students. They receive the religion background, and Muslims receive it. And there are atheist students and indigenous religious background, they are free. They do not, they don't, it's not a requirement to attend any kind of religions, but school offered an opportunity, is a kind of multi-religion in the country. Like when I explained the extracurricular, the school teach like a Turkish languages, English languages, Arabic languages, and French languages, and also with the 3 largest tribal Hausa, Igbo, Yoruba languages, the students that can speak their languages, understanding, which is the best factor to understanding each other to stop the crisis all over the country. So I hope I answered your question.
I have seen schools in some major cities in Turkey, and then I've extensively seen tutoring centers in schools in disadvantaged areas of southeast Turkey. And then I've seen these schools in Iraq, and I would make a general statement that where there is greater need, there are many more scholarships. And I know there was a Christian family in Iraq that was very disadvantaged, and their daughters got 14 years of free, excellent education because they needed it.
First of all, thank you very much for these wonderful presentations. It were wonderful. They were great. One question actually for Martha. With regard to our, what we see in Iraq, as you know, we have also a great American presence in Iraq. What is the reaction of Americans in Iraq to these schools? And also, what is the prospect of these schools in other parts of Iraq, not only in northern Iraq, but in other parts of Iraq, maybe in Baghdad, in Mosul? What, do you see any kind of feature about this? And my question for Hasan and Susan, again, thank you very much for your wonderful presentation. How would be accurate if we say in Nigeria, Gülen-inspired schools are the majority or only schools that are Christians and Muslims can learn together? Because you mentioned that there is a great separation in Nigeria. I'd like to clear a little bit more information on this.
Your second question is easier. Are there possibilities for these schools in other parts of Iraq? I heard that in Mosul and in Baghdad, people are saying, we'll give you land, we'll give you buildings, please, please come. There seemed to be many places that would like to have Turkish schools. So are there very generous people, very brave people who are willing to go teach in those places? Your first question, how do people of the U.S. respond to this? Okay, this is really hard to talk about.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
No, I think it's so important. I teach in a school that has over half of the students involved with the U.S. military in one way or another. I teach in a school where we're repeatedly having psychologists come in and help teachers because so many of our students have post-traumatic stress syndrome from the violence that they have seen in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I passionately tell these stories and show these pictures because I want our students, I want people of the U.S. to know the humanity of the Iraqi people and the potential for reconciliation and for building a positive future together. And I commend people inspired by Gülen for the courageous way that they build the human family.
Yes, as Nigerian being divided along religious and tribals, so as a population, as a percentage of the Muslim population, 50% in Nigeria, 40 is Christian, and 10% of indigenous religions. So, and Nigerian administrator cannot control the students when they're selecting. Whenever they have taken an exam, they're taking the first whatever they picked. But for 30, as I said, 600 students from all population, all the 17 colleges, so 53% of the Muslims and 40 something in the Christians and remaining non-believers. But the problem is in Nigeria, the school education system are divided by religions. So this school, the factors, significant factors of these schools, students from different background, the religion background, that's study side by side. They're learning their religions. The sermons that I mentioned before, they offered by school administrators. In some Christian students, they attend Friday sermons, and some Muslims attend the Christian sermons in the school. So they're learning each other, because all problems coming by ignorant. If I don't know anything about Christian religion, so of course I always be ignorant person to not have any idea to discuss with my friend. So the school having the all students from different background to teach them, we are all human beings. It doesn't matter whatever you come from and whatever your beliefs. So it's kind of the unique philosophy, unique curriculum running by Nigerian Turkish colleges to bring all those students from different backgrounds to understanding each other, to stop all the crises which happening in the country.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say one thing. It's not exactly in response to your question, but I want to emphasize again, I think these stories are the story of the Gülen movement. And just for me, I mean, these are the stories that from the very beginning of my association were what inspired me. And I just want to underline the courage of definitely in Iraq, but in Nigeria is also very torn by violence. And the courage of these young Turkish teachers and I mean, such an example for, like in schools of education, we're always wondering about, how to teach, our schools are failing and that sort of thing, but this example is amazing, and so that's all.
Okay. Professor Findlay, I'd just like to know, we have several minutes left, so Professor Findlay.
Well, maybe what I'm going to say will start a discussion that will last for several minutes. I will try not to take up several minutes. One of the questions I've been trying to assess for myself as I tried to learn about the Gülen movement for my own research was how to assess it as a global movement. And as it happens in my, another part of my day job is teaching world history, and I also write in that field. So I have to think about these global picture things quite a bit. And listening to the presentations at this conference, I, of course, learned a great deal that implies answers for that first question about how global the movement is. And one of the thoughts that's occurred to me is in the nature of a comparison out of my, the other part of my day job as a world history teacher. And that is, it has occurred to me that potentially the Gülen movement might have, for the 21st century, something like the significance that the Gandhi movement had for the 20th century. And both in the sense of being a movement rooted in a specific tradition, but also reaching out to others on the relevant scale of the times. And this is just a comparative thought. It's not a question, but maybe other people will have thoughts about it, and that will turn it into a question and a discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Findlay. And one final, very quick question.
Yes. Actually, yes, it is a very quick question. This is again Dilek Biscuit from University of Chicago. I was just wondering if any of the speakers know more about, because it's fascinating and it's very expensive, Is it local philanthropy, a centralized fund, or how are the schools financed?
Keep it brief.
Okay, let me go brief. As I mentioned, the school and they're running with tuition based. So most of the funding coming from the students who's they pay tuition. Another, the Turkish, the businessman who works in the particular country, they support the schools for teacher salary and for other resources. So, but mostly the funding comes from the Turkey, which is it's the country like a. I don't know which city was supporting Nigeria, but mostly in Nigeria the students are the fee based, but some support coming from Turkey, which is Turkish business, Turkish sponsor. As I mentioned, and some sponsor from like for land, and then the government give free for the schools, and they helping the schools, and so, and then for the teacher salary, they are not too high, as you maybe think about the teaching in overseas, they get more than salary, but the teachers mostly inspired by the Gülen idea, they are the altruistic the perspective, so they all the supports come from the school, student teaching, and some sponsor from Turkey, but mostly the sponsor they're working in the particular country.
Okay. One of the people at one of the schools I visited said some very generous businessmen in Gaziantep are helping to support our school.
Yes, but for your question, you might find all your answers from the Helen Ibo, the books. She explained all those the fundings and sponsors, where the money comes from for the schools. Okay.
Okay, now if I may abuse my privilege as chair to just share one final thought. There was an interesting question on challenges in the schools, and I think there's a challenge also to the Gülen movement that I didn't hear about, and perhaps I'll contribute a paper at a future conference. So I mean, one of the areas of my own interest because of my own personal background is Tatarstan and the Russian Federation, and I think the Gülen movement definitely faces tremendous challenges in the Russian Federation. Professor Kanish might even have more to add than I do, but in terms of works of 19th and 20th century Turkish thinkers such as Said Nursi, and if I'm not mistaken, Fethullah Gülen as well, this is labeled as extremist literature. And you can go to jail in Russia for possessing extremist literature. And so I know that it sounds like it's a throwback to the 19th century and the times of Ilminsky and so on, but so there are areas of the world where anything that is Turkish or connected with Turkey is somehow seen as either radical or foreign or somehow inimical to the interests of the state. And like in Russia, it's also the case that anything Islamic is labeled as somehow extremist. So there are challenges like that weren't mentioned. So on that note, I would like to ask you to join me in thanking all of our paper presenters.